Moving on to another topic of failure is flock safety. So this week, it basically came out that Flock Safety, the license plate reader and surveillance tech company that's used by police departments across the country, and is being pushed as a company that helps solve crime or to prevent crime. Well, it turns out that a lot of police departments are using it for things that they shouldn't be using it for, primarily in trying to stalk girlfriends, wives, ex-wives, and other people that is one thing. Another one is that they're using it to follow citizens around. So one of the examples I saw was that a citizen went across state lines to buy weed where it is legal, came back to the state where it is illegal. And so they used that as a reason to pull him over and then arrested him. So like all these use cases that aren't necessarily the intended reason for flock safety to exist, but makes it easy to do, which is, kind of what critics have been saying, that it's like, where do you draw the line of like what its intended usage is versus what it's actually getting used for? And part of what is the huge fail here is how flock safety is reacting to all this, right? The number one thing being that they have told police departments to hide the fact that they're using them and that it's not and then also the way that Flock is responding to it, right? Like they're saying that it's individual departments making bad calls, it's not company policy for them to do this. But this always goes back to the whole like bad apples argument, right? Where it's like you always try to, say that it's, certain individuals or certain, individual police departments. But the fact that it is rampant across various departments and many police officers, and it's always falling back to the same thing, means that you can't just deny that it's happening, but you have to be able to explain it in a way that makes sense to not only the critics who have been, raging on about this for a very long time, but also the citizens that could have been convinced that what you were using it for made sense, which is that crime prevention, right? And that's kind of been like this whole thing that I've, been, talking about a lot recently, which is how is what you're promoting, how does it fit into the cultural narratives of what people are talking about at the time, right? So if you're in any way related to, a particular industry or like what's happening, you have to know what that cultural context is, because
Right.
you have to know what people are going to be potentially saying about you. So in terms of like surveillance, like so many people, this has kind of come into the diaspora because everyone is concerned with, what's happening, right? Like if you'll remember that Super Bowl commercial about Ring cameras that like promoted finding dogs. I think it was like 25 dogs like over a year, right? And so they thought this was going to be like an interesting use case and people were going to like rally around the company and like sign up for like Ring devices because they're like, oh, we'll help you find dogs. And like they actually ended up having the complete opposite response because people were like, wait, you're only finding 25 dogs in all this? One. B, I never opted into this. And all of a sudden you're saying that you're using my Ring camera to help you do these things that I never signed up for. It led to this like protest against the company and the devices because they're like, this isn't the intended use case at all, A, but B, I'm now uncomfortable that you're using my things to infringe on privacy in general. And I think more and more people are starting to wisen up to this and surveillance, the whole idea of AI and like how that's being used. Obviously, the whole like child safety thing with like social media platforms and AI platforms and how they're treating individuals, but then also, children. And this is all kind of coming up as like a way that like, these companies now have to respond to. And so this is like a huge PR failure for me because for one, like, I guess they didn't, think through what would happen if it came out so that they were trying to tell the police departments to deny that they're using flock safety cameras. But then also once it has gotten out, speaking more to the legality side of things of like, well, legally it's, that it may be technically true, but that's not what company policy is. And I think just like getting into the semantics of things just pisses off everybody even more because you're trying to act as if like, you're above it and you're just trying to use like legal like jargon to get yourself out of it, as opposed to the moral debate that's actually happening about like whether this should continue to be the a thing that happens. Shannon, would love to hear your thoughts just on, this in general. Not sure how much you know about flock safety, but yeah.
Goodness gracious. I mean, where do you even begin with all of this? I mean, like, this is just like such a wild time to run into this problem, to have this conversation. Because, yeah, the sort of idea of a surveillance state is a thing that is top of mind, not just with Flock, but things like meta glasses, things like, our government being very brazen about, them, using bias to determine how they're going to govern. Like something like this during a perhaps calmer time might not have raised such alarm. It would have raised concern, but maybe not as like crazy of an alarm as like, hey, this brand or this company that, touts that they are all about transparency is communicating to
Hmm.
some of the most powerful individuals in our civilian society that, hey, you don't have to be transparent with the
Hmm.
people that you are policing, all in the name of like brand protection.
Yeah.
It is an insane comms failure to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Who worked in comms, I could not imagine not taking into account, like, hey, if this email were to ever leak, how bad would it look?
Going to happen is what there was some city somewhere that like overnight all their flock cameras are gone. So now it's like individuals are taking it upon themselves to destroy them or take them down, get rid of them, or vandalize them so badly that they can't actually film anymore. So it's really becoming this thing of like, they can't just deny it anymore, right? Like there's no hiding it. People are actively, like it's on people's radar, pun intended.
Right.
And people now are actively taking it upon themselves to fix the problem.
It's on TikTok. Like it is on TikTok. Like if you go
Yeah.
on TikTok, there are people who are very, very overtly instructing people on how to be essentially vigilantes
Yeah.
in this to sort of take down Flock, because now, because of this, Flock is being positioned as the
Hmm.
enemy. That is how, and there's really no way to combat that after you have already proven whose side you're on. Because with these type of things, there is no, like, it's hard to say like there's a gray area and like where we're all working towards a common goal, when the reality is that there are going to be certain neighborhoods that are more vulnerable to this, because you have to consider like, where is Flock even present? It's probably not going to be as present in affluent neighborhoods as it is in neighborhoods of color, lower income neighborhoods. So now you have this like very staunch like class thing and race thing that is now attached to this brand, instead of recognizing like, hey, we need to come at this from an angle of deep, deep sensitivity, understanding of where we sit in society, as you mentioned, saying just rather, yeah, just don't tell them that you did this, even though, again, like we know that there are these bad apples that are using this product for
Hmm.
nefarious reasons.
That's the other thing too, right? Like usually this whole bad apple argument gets fixed by getting rid of said bad apples, right?
Right.
But it's not like Flock can go to police departments and be like, well, fire these police officers because they're the ones that are ruining our product and our brand image, right?
Right.
Because police departments, like, that's not, I mean, yes, it looks bad for the police departments, but they could just say, well, this wasn't happening when these cameras weren't around. And so the officers are using them to use it for their own like individual means, right? But that makes both of them look bad. And if anybody's going to come out looking, or I guess covering their asses more, it's going to be the police departments and not like Flock safety, because the police departments will just like air out, the Flock safety and try to blame them as much as possible because they want to keep their job. So like really there's nothing really here that like Flock safety can do with like the police departments to get rid of those bad apples. So what can they say? Like, that isn't our intended purpose. Okay, well, what are you going to do to prevent that from happening? Well, they'll probably have to admit to like what's, possible with their product, which they probably don't want to do. So honestly, I'm not sure how Flock Safety is going to get themselves out of this unless they can. Like one thing I did see today, actually, they must have done some sort of like deal because the Free Press has a TikTok video that came out saying that, the vandalization like is preventing crimes from being like solved or prevented. So like, people shouldn't fear the cameras if they're not doing anything illegal, which is not a very good defense for any of this. So it just
Right.
makes them look bad because they keep defaulting to these narratives once they've already seen that people are not willing to give up their privacy for those like to like prevent crime. So they are gonna have to like work on something different because like I just don't see that flying anymore.
When has that argument ever worked? Like
Hmm.
it's basically the same as like, oh, you should just comply. Just
Hmm.
comply and you won't run into any issues if you run into like just some cop that's on a power trip and having a bad day.
Hmm.
Like you can't put the onus on the people when the people aren't the root of the problem. They are
Hmm.
responding to an overreach, a brazen overreach that at this point, no side with the power to stop it is interested in stopping.
Hmm.
So I don't know what you expect anybody to do. Now, I am not advocating for the vandalism of any property or anything of the lines. I am just saying that this is a form of protest and
Hmm.
protest is the language of the unheard. So you have to, at some point, have a difficult conversation and say, like, this is so much bigger than just like us looking bad. We already look bad. It can't
Hmm.
get, let me not say that. It can
I mean, it
absolutely,
could get worse.
people have proven that they can make things worse if they really want to make it
Yeah.
worse. But at this point, it's like it's more than like brand safety or brand or, like correcting a narrative. Now it really is about getting to the root of a very pervasive problem that has very, very serious, dangerous, or even fatal consequences if you don't intervene and figure out how to make this. So it's like, it's so much bigger than like a brand issue now. It is like literally an issue of state security. And that you have to like recognize like, when you're just like, hey, this is above my pay grade. We absolutely need to figure out a solution that like requires us to maybe like head over to like somebody's White House, head over to somebody's state capitol and figure out some legislation that allows everyone to be on the right side of history here because like you've made it infinitely worse with just like one bad bit of advice. So
Hmm.
now you have all the cleanup. You need to like it's time to pick up the big boy mop and figure this out. But like this is like a comms nightmare for me. Like
Yeah.
this is like the worst thing where it's like I have created now this problem that now exceeds anything that I can possibly do about it. Like now we have to bring in like legislation and like government intervention to
Hmm.
make sure that these things are being used properly. It's like I don't want to say that I feel for the comms person. I don't. You could have gone about this a way better way.
Yeah.
But my God, comms people, like, please, before you send an email that could be like even remotely sketched, I need you to have some conversations and be like, yeah, there's a line that I'm not willing to cross. And
Hmm.
like, if you're asking me to basically like tell this body of governance to lie, then that's where I've got to opt out and maybe like
Hmm.
hit up Indeed, hit up that LinkedIn, go somewhere else because like it's not worth it. It's just not worth it.
Definitely. Okay.